Guys, hell's on fire.
Oh, hell no, mate.
Wow. Yep, that's going in the memory video. So I am in the Protestant cemetery that is connected to JUC. It has some very significant people buried here, like Horatio Spafford, who wrote the famous hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul," and many others. But why I brought you here today is actually for another reason that I guess is actually connected to graveyards, and that is hell. A light and cheery topic, I know, but I think it's an important topic. I think you would agree. And I brought you to this graveyard to talk about hell, not just to be eerie and a downer, but because just beyond me over here is part of the Hinnom Valley. JUC is built on the modern day Mount Zion overlooking the Hinnom Valley. So in Hebrew, Gai Hinnom, which literally means the Valley of Hinnom, it's also been referred to as Gai Ben Hinnom, which means the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, and it's referred to as this in the Bible. It first appears in Joshua as part of the boundary lines that the Lord gives Joshua and all the tribes of Israel. And it appears several times in the Bible, and by the time we get to Jesus, this word has been translated into Greek as Gehenna. But you can kind of hear the similarity, Gai Hinnom, Gehenna. You can hear the transliteration there. And it's this word, which is connected to a physical place right over here, which I'll bring you to in a moment, that gets translated in many Bibles as hell, as the hell that Jesus is referring to. And thus, I think for many of us who maybe haven't studied this concept or haven't been here, I can definitely say this was the case for me, we get our understanding and idea of hell from a word and a place that we haven't actually seen and we don't know the context of. We just hear in the New Testament about the fiery pits of hell, or the flaming, or I don't think it says pits of hell, but the like eternal flames of hell, of Gehenna. We don't even get that word, we just get hell. And we're kind of left often to our own devices to decipher and to figure out what hell means and what it looks like. I think a lot of the classic media portrayal of hell is actually a lot more influenced by Greek mythology and Greek culture more than it is the actual place Jesus was talking about and the context surrounding the Gehenna Valley and the Hinnom Valley, which is why I just wanted to talk about that for a few minutes today. And let me just preface this by saying there are a lot of theories about this valley, about what went on here. I mean, even just take the Hinnom Valley out of it, when it just comes to the theological understanding of hell, there are so many theories, and I understand that. And I just want to bring a little bit of context to the Hinnom Valley today, and a little bit of my own opinion on hell in connection to how I interpret this context. So I just want to preface it with that. And what does seem apparent throughout the biblical references to the Hinnom Valley, as well as other historical references, is that this valley has a long connection with child sacrifices. Listen to what Jeremiah says in Jeremiah 19:2 through, I think, 6. So Jeremiah is talking to the people, and he says, this is what the Lord says. Go out to the valley of Ben Hinnom, near the entrance of the potsherd gate. There proclaim the words I tell you, and say, hear the words of the Lord, O kings of Judah and people of Jerusalem. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Listen, I am going to bring a disaster on this place that will make the ears of everyone who hears it tingle. For they have forsaken me and made this a place of foreign gods, and they have burned sacrifices in it to the gods, and neither they nor their fathers nor the kings of Judah ever knew that they had filled this place with the blood of the innocent. And they have built high places to Baal, to burn their sons in the fire as offerings to Baal, something I did not command or mention, nor did it ever enter my mind. Whoa, so there's that. Jeremiah clearly referring to child sacrifices being done here, Baal being worshipped, and not only that, it's by the kings of Judah. We know that King Ahaz, King Manasseh, in the 7th and 8th centuries BCE, they were a part of this child child sacrificing cult. It has also been connected to the cult of Molech. There isn't a lot of archaeological evidence of this, like in other places that are connected to children sacrifice. There have been like mass graves found or children's bones. Oh my gosh, a bird just like flew really close to my head. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, so there's not a lot of archaeological evidence, granted, but there are a lot of literary references, textual evidence. So all of this to say, it's really bright. Should I? Oh, there we go. Look at that. I just awkwardly stand like this. It is interesting to put hell, or at least how Jesus is referring to hell, in context with the Hinnom Valley. Because take just for one example, take Mark 9:42, where he's talking, where he mentions Gehenna. It says hell in my Bible, but the word is Gehenna. And he's talking about Jesus is talking about sin. And he says, and if anyone causes one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, which to me is already interesting that there's this like reference to children, to young ones. Even if he's referring to people who are just young in their faith or following him, there's like, I don't know, for me it's already this like literary connection to the context here. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a large millstone tied around his neck, which we've talked about in one of my other videos, so I'll put a link to that video if you want to learn about millstones later. And then Jesus continues and says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than with two hands to go into hell, or to go into Gehenna. And I think that this is such a fascinating verse in context with the Hinnom Valley and what used to go on there. Because I think we're more naturally prone, or at least I can say I am more naturally prone, to read these verses about Gehenna and hell, and you're thinking about how the burning is what happens to you. Like if I think of Jesus talking about like flames of fire, I think about like, okay, if I were metaphorically like in hell, the flames of fire, like the punishment, is being burned up myself, if that makes sense. But in this context, I wonder if Jesus is almost saying it would be better for you to be maimed, to not have hands, than to go down and allow your hands to do the kinds of evil things that happened in this valley, in the Valley of Hinnom. Like using your hands to slaughter children, like using your hands to sacrifice to other gods, to hurt people. You see, there's a perspective change here. Rather than thinking of ourselves as the people who are being slaughtered and burned and in eternal torment, which interestingly, in the case of the Hinnom Valley, it was children who were innocent. As Jeremiah says, the innocent were slaughtered down there. They were the ones who were actually in the flames. And what Jesus seems to be connecting hell to, at least in this verse, and at least in my opinion, is the doing of wrong, the active doing of terrible things, hurting the innocent, and having a heart that is willing to do that kind of stuff down in that valley. That seems to be what Jesus, in my mind, is connecting hell to, is this continuation, this willingness to participate in a way of life that is so counter to the kingdom that he came to bring, that is so counter to our humanity, how we were actually created in the image of God to act and live. And I use humanity specifically because that's kind of what I want to end on, is this, I can still remember the day when I was sitting in my theology class with my professor, Adam Nieder. I think I was like 20 back in the day. And in that class, he was talking about how so often we negate our understanding of humanity. We talk about like, oh, I'm sorry, that's the human in me, or like, oh, my humanity caused me to do this thing. And my professor was saying how this is such a misuse of the word, because in saying that, then we're assuming that like when God enters us and cleanses us, we're no longer human, we're like some other kind of being. But rather, he would say, no, it's not that the human in us is doing terrible things. It's that when we don't live in the way of God, when we turn our back from God, we're actually living in a way of life that is less than human. And if we take humanity out of it, then we have to re-understand how we view consciousness, torment, burning, when you really are a shell of yourself anyways. And that's kind of what I wanted to get at, is if we understand hell in this way, and we understand that there's a darkness and a depth of evil that overcomes you to the point where you're not who you were anymore, and you don't want God, and you're not interested, and you can't enjoy or have God because you don't have the ability anymore. I think that gives us a very different picture and understanding of hell. And it becomes less about, okay, I have to be good so I get into the right place, and I don't want to be bad so I don't go here. And we start to realize that the concepts of heaven and hell are not about getting into the right place, but about becoming a person who is living into our full potential of being created in the image of God, who is living into the characteristics and the traits and the values and enjoying the relationship with God and with others, and all of these things that allow us to see and enjoy heaven and enjoy complete communion with God. So I think these are some of the questions we should be asking cautiously, carefully, humbly. Those are some of my thoughts. Take them or leave them. If you don't like them, you are free to say hell no. I had to get that pun in there one time. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Mint Tea and Theology. Once again, I do not have mint tea, and I will see you next time.